Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
The upcoming Star Wars Disney Plus series, The Acolyte, will continue a record-breaking Jedi cast. One thing that makes the upcoming series so unique, aside from being set during the High Republic prior to this prequel trilogy, is that it's mostly told from the point of the view of the Sith. While stories in the franchise are often shared from the perspective of the Jedi, this time, that will be different. However, while the villains might be the leads, fans shouldn't expect the show to skimp out on including Jedi in the project, and there'll be a couple of them. A lot, apparently. After all, the Jedi Order is set at an extreme high at this point on the timeline, a fact that the series won't be ignoring. While recently speaking on the Dagobah Dispatch podcast, the Acolyte showrunner, Leslie Headland, talked about the upcoming Star Wars Disney Plus show while teasing that the amount of Jedi in the series that it will contain. Headland had first teased that the project will be the earliest in the Star Wars timeline than they have ever been in live action. As she says in full quote, "I would say that the Acolyte stands out because it is the earliest in the Star Wars timeline than we have ever been in live action. We are towards the end of the High Republic, leading into the prequels, George Lucas's prequels. So we are looking at a time period of where the Jedi are at the height of their power. We're looking at a time period of where there is peace throughout the galaxy, and it was very challenging and interesting to make a Star Wars with no war in it." Ending that quote right there, first of all, she mentions George Lucas and his prequels. Could there be some very close and specific tie-ins though, however, towards the end of the Acolyte for how many ever seasons it may run for that lead directly into the events of George Lucas's prequels? That would be absolutely amazing. That would be really, really cool. Also note of how she mentions that this is the earliest that we've ever been in the Star Wars timeline that we have seen in live action. In other forms of media in Star Wars, of course, video games, books, and comics have gone earlier with the Old Republic and the High Republic novels and books. Of course, the novels and the books are something that this show, The Acolyte, are going to be taking inspiration from to, well, unfold this entirety of the story and taking characters, maybe bits and parts of narratives, and implementing that into the Acolyte show. And lastly, of what I find interesting that she mentions in that quote, of how it's interesting to make a Star Wars with no necessarily any war on it, and that is a very interesting topic to bring up. Every Star Wars trilogy and show that is set within a specific era has a war going on. The Galactic Civil War in the original trilogy, the Clone Wars in the prequels, and I guess another Galactic Civil War in the sequel trilogy. So to go to this point in the timeline and not necessarily have a war that's full-fledged or going on is going to be new and interesting. It's almost like a Cold War at this point. Anyway, to make an even more unique story here, the story will be from the perspective of the bad guys, or the villains of Star Wars, as she also teases in another quote, though the question became, well, what should the show be about if it's not going to be about a galactic conflict? And I think of that, what makes this show different and interesting is that it's from the perspective of the bad guys, or the villains of Star Wars. These are the people who are using the Force in their own way, dipping into the darker side of the Force, and are doing it without being sanctioned by a larger institution, which of this case is the Jedi. And I think that Star Wars is always about some version of the underdog versus the institution. Ending that quote right there, a perfect wording right there, quite honestly. The underdog versus the institution can be applied to every other conflict and thing that we've kind of seen throughout Star Wars in the movies and shows, is that our people, normally the good guys, are up against a bigger bad. And then also having the idea of that the bad guys, or the villains of Star Wars as they're described, have a different idea of how to use the Force, and that this institution of the Jedi Order are controlling of that is something that's very well known in the Star Wars lore, especially in the prequels. She had then also went on to confirm that the Acolyte will have more Jedi than you've ever seen in any other of the Star Wars' content, as she says that in quote, and I just thought it was a very interesting to do a show about the bad guys and to set that during the time period that made the most sense. So I think that's what sets it apart. It's kind of almost flipped. We have more Jedi than you've seen in any other of the Star Wars content. Ending that quote right there. An army of Jedi is something I'm totally down for and looking forward to seeing that, just to see it, visualize it, and what that actually might look like, how they all kind of co-live and coexist together, because when you get a lot of them, things can become difficult to a point. I think the thing that mostly fascinates me, though, however, with having that many Jedi set in one project here for the Acolyte is that, well, that's a lot of Force users, so I'm very intrigued by that. And while there might be more Jedi, the series will also focus on the more morally ambitious characters than audiences have ever seen in Star Wars as well, as she says that in quotes. But at the same time, I think that you see more morally ambitious characters than you've ever seen in any other Star Wars content, and I think I can say this pretty confidently. I don't think you're going to see action in other shows the way that you are going to see it used and utilized in our show. Ending that quote right there, she's setting the bar high, and I'm very excited for that. The action in this show is going to be insane. I'm really hoping that we have similar action sequences or a lightsaber combat that we do see in the prequels. Is something I'm totally down for, and I can't wait to see how they do that. Now, with such a focus on the record-breaking amount of Jedi in the show, for one thing, for starters, could fans end up seeing more scenes with more Jedi than a scene like the final battle in Attack of the Clones? And I think the answer to that has to be a solid yes. I'm so excited to see how this goes. So for right now, at least 8 new Jedi actors are already confirmed to appear in the upcoming Star Wars series, all of which are unnamed. Some of those actors include Amanda Steinberg, Lee Jung-jae, Carrie Ann Moss, Daphne Keane, Dean Charles Chapman, and Charlie Bennett. And at least 2 new Jedi characters have names, including Junis Santumos, Wookiee Jedi Master Cal Naka, and Rebecca Henderson's Vernesta Rao. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but I'm pretty sure that both of those guys would be based off of the High Republic novels, which is very cool, as I mentioned earlier on at the beginning of this video, of how they're pulling things and content and narratives from the books and implementing that, or characters at the same time, into the Acolyte show at the same time. Now, once again, I'm sorry if I mispronounced those names. Star Wars certainly isn't a stranger to Jedi, but many stories do tend to focus on a small group of the Force users instead of large quantities, and keeps them more limited, more secretive even at that. Even the prequel trilogy, where Jedi were abundant during this time period, only to put the focus on Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. But let's not forget the Clone Wars animated show that deals with a lot more Jedi and Force users at the same time. Now, with brief moments given to others like Yoda or Mace Windu, though, throughout the prequels as well. Similarly, the High Republic boasts thousands upon thousands of active Jedi, simultaneously potentially the most ever active at once in a live-action project as teased. So it makes sense for a story in that era to be filled to the brim with members in the Order, which can make things chaotic. I can't wait to see some of the politics during this time period as well. Guys, of course, I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What do you think about all of this and all these new teases that we've discussed in today's video? I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What are you guys looking forward to most with the Acolyte? Let me know in the comment section down below. And until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching today's video. This has been Unofficial Star Wars. Have a great one, guys. May the Force be with you as always. Peace out.